Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, comedian, filmmaker, street prophet.
Guy who is wearing sunglasses during our podcast.
Yeah, how would they know?
Well, now they know.
Now they know.
It's a little disconcerting.
Is this intimidating you, Josh? My pink shades.
I'm
and my
scared.
Pink hat?
Yeah, I don't know if I can continue now because you're just staring me down there and I can't see your eyes.
Yeah, you don't even know if I'm staring you down.
That's true. You could be closing your eyes.
I am
for all
staring
I know.
you down.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll soldier on somehow. In this season of Awesome Movie Year, we're talking about the films of 2007. And in this episode, we have a special new category for Awesome Movie Year.
Yeah, the audience was like, we love this show so much. You got to expand this season at least by one episode.
Is that what the audience said?
This is what I'm going to go with. And they said, it can be anything. We don't care. We just want more Awesome Movie Year. And then Dave, our producer, who, as you know, hosts another podcast called Piecing It Together.
Yes.
Right. He is all like, I have an idea. Can I talk, fellas? And we're like, just produce, crack the whip. But he said he wanted to do a pick. So we gave Dave a pick.
Dave, what's your pick?
Well, my pick for this Awesome Movie Year was David Wain's The 10.
Yes, it was.
Dave.
I'm sorry, guys.
When was the last time you watched this film?
Just a year or two ago. I watch this film all the time.
Yeah, like a year or two ago, but not, any time in preparation for the season.
I actually watched a bunch of YouTube clips because you were borrowing my DVD at the moment. But
see, it's your fault, Jason, for borrowing the DVD.
I watched like 3 or 4 of the 3.5 of these vignettes.
Yeah, there are 10 of them.
Yeah.
There are indeed.
So less than 50%, but
that's improvement for you.
It is improvement.
Yeah, that's
you're like the guy who used to just go to the gym and then the parking lot was like, nah, and then turn around. Now you're like the guy who's like, oh, I did 5 minutes of cardio.
Yeah, crush it.
Yeah, that's quite an analogy, especially because Dave is like the king of the gym.
He was the member of the month at his gym, guys.
He was.
So
you're embarrassing me, guys.
No, that's something to be proud of.
I feel like we've talked about this on multiple episodes now. Dave's achievements at the gym.
Well, he doesn't really have much else going for him.
So we watched The 10 on Dave's recommendation, and The 10, which, as he says, is directed by David Wain, co-written by David Wain and Ken Marino, who were, of course, both members of the comedy troupe The State. It was their follow-up to Wet Hot American Summer, which is, I think, Jason, is one of your favorite movies.
I love Wet Hot American Summer, and that's a movie I could watch over and over again.
Yeah, and that was a movie that did not succeed initially and has become a big cult classic over time.
Yeah, and that was one of the movies you would point to as that really shined in the DVD era, right?
Right.
That Born Identity. And it's like, you wonder if Wet Hot had just been like a Netflix movie, do you think it would have caught on the way that it would have?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's would have reached a lot of people in the similar way that it ended up doing, which is at home rather than in theaters. But I think by the time The 10 came out, Wet Hot had definitely built a bit of a following and people were anticipating what they would do next. But this movie, we could have used this for our flop episode, really. It made $785,528 at the box office on a budget of $5.25 million. So it was a giant failure.
But not for the filmmakers, because Think Film bought it at Sundance for $4.5 million.
So yeah, Think Film, bad decision.
And I was looking back, Think Film did some good things with their short,
Yeah,
run.
they went out of business not long after this movie came out.
I feel like this is going to be in a few years. We're going to be like, remember Annapurna?
Yeah, sadly that may be true. I don't think Film was quite as big as Annapurna, but so this movie was not a box office success, and the only award nomination I found for this movie, and I thought this was kind of amusing, it was nominated at the Golden Trailer Awards for Best Voiceover. And I watched the trailer. I don't know, Dave, if you've ever seen that trailer.
I love that trailer. I was going to bring it up, but yeah.
And for 90% of the trailer, which is voiced over by Paul Rudd, who is the star, I'm like, what is anything about this?
Yeah.
And then they get to the end where he's naming all the stars, and there's a huge list of famous people who are in this movie. And he kind of, I don't want to imitate it, but he just babbles through the names of the stars. And apparently that was enough for a Golden Trailer nomination. And that's the best this movie did award-wise.
Paul Rudd is always funny. Can we just admit that?
No, Paul Rudd is funny. Is he always funny? Is Paul Rudd funny in this movie?
He was one of the highlights of the movie, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. So Jason, had you seen this before?
I hadn't, and I've seen many of the other movies that Wain and Marino have collaborated on. So in that regard, I was interested to see what Dave saw in this film.
Right. I had seen this movie when it opened in theaters. I wrote a review that was not particularly positive.
Do we have a quote from your review?
No, you know what? I was going to maybe quote my review, but honestly, my review was not that interesting. I think I was not engaged in this movie in any way.
Can we just say that awesome movie year just went meta? Josh gave a review of his review. So
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Thank you. Yes. So no, I did look it up because I think we quoted one of my reviews in one previous episode where I read my review and I was like, oh, that was kind of clever. But that was not the case for this one. I think I phoned this one in.
Well, Josh, I also have a review of your review.
What is that?
Not so good.
All right. You didn't read it, but I'll take that anyway.
I will say that we didn't really know each other yet at that point, and maybe we had seen each other at a screening or something. But I remember reading that review and being like, "Who is this guy? And why doesn't he like this movie?"
A lot of people say that about Josh.
Yeah,
very often. He's got some haters on Twitter out there.
That's true. I do inspire some negative reactions among some people. So, Dave, I assume you saw this in theaters?
Yeah, we actually had to drive to LA to see it. I mean,
amazing! You drove from Vegas to LA just to see this film.
Even though it opened here, that's why I reviewed it.
Yeah, well, we drove there. And then I got to see it again when it did open here. But we drove there to see it when it first opened, like a couple weeks prior.
Who's we?
Gina and I.
Your
my fiance.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Now, was literally the whole trip, the impetus was like, let's go see this movie
we turned it into a trip, but that was definitely the reason we went. I mean, you gotta understand, I mean, The State was just my absolute favorite thing in the world. The Wet Hot American Summer was the follow-up, and then the Stella shorts were just as important to me as The State and Wet Hot American Summer. I mean, these are the funniest things in the world to me. And so David Wain and the entire crew were making something new, and I wasn't sure if it was coming to Vegas or not. You know, it was still a small indie release. I wasn't sure. I was like, we're going to LA.
I love that. I love that you did that. I didn't love the Stella shorts, but I still look back on The State and, still quote it. And I think it's, I mean, man, for a 4-season MTV sketch show that not many people know right now, I'd say.
No, but it was hugely influential.
Oh,
I mean,
and all those guys have pretty much succeeded on much bigger levels.
Right,
then,
right.
It seems like people who make things knew it. It influenced so many people that make things that went into comedy and all that kind of stuff, but maybe just not mainstream audiences.
Right. It's like that Velvet Underground bit, like, nobody listened to this band, but everybody who listened to them started their own band.
Yeah.
I forget who said that, but that's some famous quote that I mangled right there.
It's a good, the old Groucho Marx quote again. Hey, so real fast. So, and I loved Wet Hot. You love Wet Hot. Just real fast. Josh, what did you think of The State?
I like The State a lot. I mean, I remember watching it on MTV when it aired and I enjoyed it. I don't think I was like as into it as you were. And Wet Hot, I still am kind of lukewarm on.
Sure.
But yeah, I loved watching The State. I mean, I feel like it was part of that great MTV era that included like Beavis and Butthead and some of them really like
Squirt TV.
Yeah.
I like Squirt TV.
Is that Jake Fogelnost's thing?
He's doing well again.
He is. Yeah. So I feel like that was a very creative era for MTV that they were part of.
So you were lukewarm. You weren't wet.
I was not wet. I realized as I was saying that was.
Did you have a favorite sketch from The State, Dave?
God, I mean, there's so many. The taco mailman was real classic.
Man, I don't
Taco
even remember
Mailman,
that.
Yeah.
where the last line of the sketches, I don't know, but I do know one thing. This has been the longest conversation of my life. And then the the mailbox walks away.
Yeah.
It was all just, if you've never
Yeah.
seen the state, it was very, there were no rules, surrealism,
Right.
this
Total.
type of,
Absolutely.
wherever they thought they could get a laugh, they would go for it in their own way.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't watched any of that since it originally aired, probably.
And I do think, going back to this movie, which is what the podcast
is
is
it?
about, the 10, you do see some elements of that in some of these vignettes.
Yeah.
But they don't work as well.
No, they don't. So this movie was not very well reviewed. I wasn't the only one to give it a negative review. It has a 36% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. But I found some mixed stuff to quote here. We can start with Owen Gleiberman in Entertainment Weekly, who was actually quite positive. The 10 is in many ways closer to the knockabout mishigas of Wain's TV comedy troupe work, The State and Stella. Like those shows, it's aggressively hit or miss, but the highs are high indeed, as Wain uses the commandments to create a variety-packed satire of adult mores and manners. It's like early Woody Allen crossed with late Buñuel. Most of the 10 is devious and inspired enough to juice you past any weak spots. Thou shalt be amused.
I bet you Gleiberman's the only one who compared this film to two major auteurs in the history of film.
That is what you think, but wait till you hear
Really?
the other reviews that
Wow.
I have.
All right.
So, but first, something negative from Jeanette Katsoulis, former Vegas resident, great critic in the New York Times. She says, with the 10, David Wain uses the 10 commandments the way a suicide uses a bridge, stringing together a series of stone tablet-based short films, from the gross to the surreal to the certifiably nuts. Mr. Wain, the writer and director of Wet Hot American Summer, repeats his strategy of aiming low and trusting in the higher power of genitalia. A decalogue for special ed students, the 10 leans too often toward the bizarre and the bewildering. And though rough sex is a recurring motif, the movie's overall tone is less blasphemous than raunchy. So she compared it to Krzysztof Kieslowski.
Yeah, of course. So, the Decalogue, maybe we can get red, white, and blue in there, do the whole thing. I don't, a suicide doesn't really use the bridge.
To sort of, I think she's saying is using it to propel some sort of disaster.
The person committing the suicide.
Right. A suicide is a way to say a person committing suicide. I think that's a way to use that term.
I've never really heard it that way. Have you?
I haven't, but
yeah,
let's allow it.
I think that's what she means.
All right. I don't agree. This is there's nothing Kieslowski in this film. So.
Or Buñuelian?
No, but I did think there was definitely a throwback to early Woody Allen in there that you saw later in their romantic comedy spoof acted out in a much more successful way.
Yeah. And finally, Nathan Rabin in the AV Club said, David Wain's thrilling, maddening, hilariously funny, and brutally unfunny new movie, The 10, a collection of interlinked short films based very, very loosely on the 10 Commandments, echoes the general arc of Woody Allen's career, with early funny triumphs eventually giving way to something resembling creative exhaustion. By the time the cast reunites for a self-indulgent ending musical number, Wain's thin central conceit has worn out its welcome, but the early explosively funny skits and a loose, engagingly adventurous spirit are enough to ensure this uneven but often delightful project the cult fame that accompanies pretty much everything associated with Stella mainstay Wain. And he was wrong about that. This movie does not have a cult following.
And he didn't mention Renoir. So what's the point?
No, well, he mentioned Woody Allen, though.
Yeah,
So
that seems to be the overall filmmaker that seems to get mentioned the most with him.
Yeah, and I see that only in really a small amount here. I guess maybe the really early Woody Allen, like Sleeper and stuff like that, that was more straight absurdism. Everything you ever wanted to know about sex, maybe.
The whole the whimsical romantic comedy aspects of the 70s that are based in complaininess.
Yeah, but that's just a small aspect of this movie. Did you have any other background things that you wanted to mention related to The State or Wet Hot American Summer?
I think we went over all the things that I wanted to mention in there. I will say this. One fun piece of trivia going back to Wet Hot is the newsman in this, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a newsman who comes up in a few sketches.
Yeah,
Jim
yeah.
Stencil.
Oh, yes.
Do
Yeah.
you know who Jim Stencil is in regards to the canon of the state?
I don't. I was thinking of the other newsman that goes on later, but tell me,
Louis
please.
would,
Yeah.
Jim Stencil was the name that Janine Garofalo gave David Hyde Pierce as her favorite astrophysicist when she couldn't name an astrophysicist in Wet Hot American Summer. So I like that.
Yeah, there's some little details.
I'm
there
pretty
that are
sure
good.
he showed up again in Wanderlust as well.
All right.
I bet you there is a real Jim Stencil. Back in when I was writing with my old writing partner, we had a great professor, Lou Barlow, in college, and we tried to throw the name Lou Barlow
Nice.
in every script, and we've never had a movie made.
Isn't Lou Barlow the guy from Sebado and Dinosaur Jr.?
Yeah, and I like Dinosaur Jr. as well. This is a different Lou Barlow, but I'm happy to reference both Lou Barlows.
All right.
Yeah.
Dave, did you drive to any other cities to see this movie? Perhaps fly across the country or anything like that?
Luckily, I was able to see it the second time here in Vegas.
And so you saw it twice in the theater.
maybe even 3. I don't remember. But
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Hey, Dave, you want to hear a good zinger that Lou Barlow, the professor, once gave me?
Sure.
He said, once he said to me, "You made the wrong decision with your life. You should have been a human being." Boom! Classic Lou Barlow.
That is classic Lou Barlow. All right. Let's take a break and we'll come back to talk about our general thoughts on the 10.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Golden Tiki, recently named one of the top tiki bars in the United States by the Food Network, and also one of the top 10 best nightlife destinations in Las Vegas by USA Today. They've got great rum, mixed drinks, and of course the Dole Whip. They've got theme nights, DJs, all kinds of fun stuff, including Al and Bud's Oasis, who are 2 robotic parrots that put on a great show every hour on the hour. So next time you're in Las Vegas, make sure to check out the Golden Tiki on Spring Mountain.
Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2007, we're talking about the pick from our producer, David Rosen, David Wain's The 10. Jason, did you like this movie?
No, I was disappointed with it. I'd say in the Marino Wain, collection,
Yeah.
this is probably my least favorite of the bunch. Wanderlust isn't great either, but those would be the 2 at the bottom of my list.
Yeah. I was also not a big fan of this. Dave, we're just going to pile on poor Dave.
No, we want his opinion on
He loves this film, yes. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm very hot and cold, or wet, hot and cold on the works of the former state members. Like I said, I'm not crazy about Wet Hot American Summer, even having seen it a couple times. I think I watched the Netflix, one of the 2 series follow-ups to that, and didn't bother watching the other one.
And I think that's fair. The follow-ups are good, but they don't really capture the chaotic brilliance of the original film, I'd say.
Yeah. I remember not being a particular fan of Role Models or Wanderlust.
No, Role Models is great. I will watch Role Models any day. And now I'm going to use that as our pick for 2008 when we do awesome movie.
If I can, real quick here.
yes, Dave.
Well, I just to kind of go right in on what you guys are saying there. I think things like Role Models and Wanderlust and They Came Together take what was great about the state and Wet Hot American Summer and go a little bit broader and more kind of just straightforward comedy with Wain's sensibility and what he does, whereas the 10 and also the Stella shorts narrows in so finely on what makes his personality so strange and weird and surreal. And I think that's why someone like me connects with it so much. Someone who just genuinely loves that so much. And I knew going into this, making this pick and having you guys watch this movie that you probably weren't going to like it, especially Josh, because I had read his review. But
Josh Bell hates everything.
Josh Bell hates everything.
I mean, I don't hate this movie. And I think what you're talking about there with the idea of it being more surreal and weirder as opposed to the efforts to kind of reach the mainstream in movies like Role Models, in theory, I'm all for all of that.
Sure.
I like the weirdness. I just feel like this movie doesn't effectively capture that the majority of the time.
I agree with Josh. I think they came up with a few good weird premises, but they didn't execute them nearly as well as when we've seen them at their best. And I also don't think they executed them nearly as well in, they came together and role models, which are at their best in a more mainstream fashion.
Right.
Yeah. So Jason, of the 10, obviously, as we kind of went
10
through,
shorts on the 10 Commandments.
Yeah. Which was your favorite?
I kind of like the Gretchen Mol one where she's in Mexico on a sexual discovery of sorts. That was
Right.
that one I enjoyed. And she was really good. Gretchen Mol, I'd like to see more from her.
Yeah, I think one thing this movie does well is there's a lot of recognizable comedy people in it, but people like Gretchen Mol and Winona Ryder and Liev Schreiber, who are generally more well known for serious work, they take advantage of their serious acting abilities to do something funny. I mean, she plays it, all three of them play their parts completely straight, and that's what makes it funny, in theory, at least.
That was maybe my overall favorite, but two others I want to point out. Oliver Platt as a horrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonator that guy's just hilarious when he wants to be, and I thought he's great as that character. Like, there's such a lack of effort; it's brilliant, And probably the one that would be the most controversial today, which I'm glad we're going to talk about, but I actually think is funny. Was the one where Ken Marino is in prison and he's already someone else's prison bitch, and Rob Corddry wants him to become his prison bitch, and they play it off as kind of like a forbidden romance,
right?
But they constantly mention how Rob Corddry is the one who should be raping him, not Big Bubba or whatever his name was.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's so over the top that I'm not sure if it would really be that controversial. I mean, it's so weird. I can't imagine anyone looking at that and thinking it's like advocating or excusing rape.
It doesn't matter, Josh.
The word, like using the word.
I tell a joke on stage where the word rape is in like a bridge to the punchline, and it has to get you there because that's explaining where we're going. And when I told it a few weeks ago, someone yelled like, "You can't joke about rape," and I'm like, that's literally the entire point of the joke, is that how rape is bad, but you didn't let me get to that point, So
right.
I think we're just at that point where just saying anything,
Yeah. I don't agree with you there, but we won't really ever know how this would play if it came out today, because of course it didn't. It came out back then.
Did you have a favorite, Josh?
Yeah, it's interesting reading through my initial review. I mentioned that Gretchen Mol sequence as well as my favorite, and watching it this time, I kind of was less into it. I feel like one of the problems that all of the sketches in this movie have is that none of them have endings.
That's true.
They just kind of stop.
Mm-hmm.
And that one too felt like a series of things, like it's about her in Mexico, but then suddenly it's years later and it's kind of about that, and then it just is over. And so I did like her performance. And like I was saying, I like the idea of these serious actors who come in to these absurd premises and play them straight. And that's the best way to do it, rather than going over the top goofy with it, I think. But yeah, that one didn't work as well for me. I think the one that I liked the most this time, and maybe the only one that I feel like I've seen references to or that has become slightly a pop culture thing, is the first sequence featuring Ken Marino's character, the doctor, when he kills the patient as a goof.
Yeah.
And I feel like that as a goof thing I've seen quoted on the internet. And I like that because, again, it just commits to this one joke.
Yeah.
That it's as a goof. And he just says it over and over again. Like it's daring you, like, you don't think this is funny? We're going to say it 15 more times until you think it's funny.
I respect that. And I'm a big Ken Marino fan all the way from back in the
Yes.
state days. He was always the most charismatic of the bunch, I think. I don't know. There's certain highlights. Ron Silver. It's nice to
I noticed you commenting on him when we were watching it together.
Gina loves Ron Silver.
He's such a good actor.
Big fan. Yeah.
Didn't he become like a weird conspiracy theorist in his later years?
He became like a Republican activist.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the same thing at this point, isn't it? No, so that was good. I the one we mentioned with Gretchen Mol, I think people would be upset about today because she's having an affair with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, some people. Although I thought about like, do you remember the Sarah Silverman show episode where she has a relationship with God, and it was a very similar kind of thing where they treat it as like this real relationship, and God is neglecting her, or they have to have a talk about their relationship. And that might have been in 2007 also, but I feel like people have done things like that, and you can do it with the right tone.
I always like when we get to see Liev Schreiber play comedy. So that was the don't covet your neighbor's stuff.
Right.
He and Joe Latrulio both try to outdo each other by buying CAT scan machines, and like it does fall apart. That one falls apart completely.
That was another one where at the beginning I was like, this is a clever idea, right? The absurd escalation of the competition based on CAT scan machines of all things. And then it just goes in this other direction, and the kids get exposed to radiation and they're going to die. And it just felt like they didn't know what they were doing. They came up with this idea of like the 10 commandments, and they have a lot of good jumping off points and then nowhere to go with them.
Yeah. I will say, like, if we're looking for the positives, I like how
are we?
How the characters, you would see as a bit player, and one would come back later as a main character in the like 80 Miles, who plays Gretchen Moll's first boss, then husband, and the last one, he's the main character who just skips church to be naked with a bunch of dudes. And the discovery on the part of Bobby Cannavale, like, I'm like, whoa, how cool is this? Like,
Roberta Fleck.
I'm a big fan of Bobby Cannavale.
Yeah, I know you like him. I feel like I've heard your impression of Bobby Cannavale on Boardwalk Empire and you're about to do it.
Of course, and it's purposely horrible. So
yeah,
I got a gun, you got a gun, we all got guns.
That's terrible.
That is really purposely. It's gotten worse too. I feel like it's got a sort of Foghorn Leghorn sound to it now.
Al Pacino scent of a woman.
Yeah.
And then the next step to make it worse would just be to slow it down with I got a gun, you got a gun, we all got guns.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But I will say that Jason's impression aside, Bobby Cannavale is great on Boardwalk Empire as this really scary villain character. So he's another one. It's nice to see him doing comedy.
Chip Rossetti.
Yes.
Yeah, he's good at everything.
Yeah, he is. And he's probably done more comedy than, say, Gretchen Mol and Liev Schreiber have done. But he's also known for a lot of serious performances.
Dave, what did you love about this movie?
Well, I love a lot of things about this movie, but I mean, just starting with my favorite segments, it would actually be that CAT scan machine one, which I love everything. I love how ridiculous it gets, but mostly I just love the two of them, Joe Latrulio and Liev Schreiber. Just their I guess chemistry. I don't know, but the way they are together is just so perfect. I love it so much. It's so ridiculous. You were mentioning the goof bit with Marino.
Yeah,
that has always been just like a great thing of, quotable for sure. I mean, I can see how that would be the one thing that kind of lived on from the movie, because, like you said, this one didn't get any kind of a cult following like what Hot American Summer did. Only like real hardcore, like, Stella State fans seem to like it, know? But as for what I like about it, I mean, I love the getting just totally into that just surreal comedy nature of the David Wain Marino thing. I definitely can see where it isn't formed into a movie as well as something like Wet Hot American Summer, but I think to me the jokes are there. I think there's nonstop funny moments through every segment. Another great one is the whole Adam Brody bit, which I think is absolutely hilarious. Everything in that one as well.
So that's where he skydives without a parachute, and he becomes, let's say, stuck in the ground for, but he becomes famous for it. And,
right. He's like a boy in the bubble kind of figure.
Yeah. And he's famous for that.
Yeah. And I kind of like those intersections, between each of them, where Paul Rudd is having romantic problems. He's got a mistress, and a wife, and he's kind of deciding what to do with his life, and that all takes place on like just a set with like a horrible stage.
Worst special effects.
Yeah. And I was gonna say the text, the CGI text on this is just garbage.
Oh, it's so bad.
Anything special effects wise in this movie is terrible.
I would say, like, honestly, as much as I love Paul Rudd absolutely doing anything. The wraparound story with Paul Rudd is probably my least favorite thing of the movie. I love the sketches more.
Well, the thing that reminded me most about Woody Allen is when you see Paul Rudd on the street catching up with Famke Janssen after they're divorced.
For sure.
But that whole trajectory of the Paul Rudd character and having the mistress and breaking up with her and everything, all of that I think has got a lot of Woody Allen-esque. But certainly that sequence when they actually leave the soundstage and they're on the street. Yeah. And of course, also related to Woody Allen, who has Paul Rudd married in the interim, Diane Wiest.
Right. And also related to Woody Allen, he has a much younger mistress, Jessica Alba.
Right.
But as we know, Jessica Alba was never Woody Allen's adopted daughter in real life. So it's not that related to Woody Allen.
Yeah. But thematically, there is a lot of Woody Allen stuff. And obviously making fun of Woody Allen and the tropes of it.
But he loves Woody Allen. I mean,
I'm sure,
dude, I keep losing the title. The romantic comedy.
They Came Together.
They Came Together is so just influenced by Woody Allen overall.
Oh, totally.
That the Paul Rudd, those interstitial bits, I did not care for, and I like Paul Rudd a lot too. And it just felt like, hey, we got Paul for 2 hours. Let's see what we can do with him. And he's just kind of breezing through whatever. And he's good at that, but it all felt very tossed off.
Well, yeah, but it's funny because we talked about this earlier in the season. And also we talked about it in season 1 with Chungking Express, right?
Yeah.
Where Wong Kar-wai had made another movie and he's like, well, I'm just going to go shoot something that I write during the day and shoot at night and everything. Right. So that's like kind of one of those things that could have turned out disastrously as well, but clearly did not.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's probably plenty of examples of things like that where the people who were making them at the time were tossing them off or doing that in between some other thing or having little resources and not anticipating this turning into anything, and then it becomes a great work of art. That didn't happen this time.
You know, Dave says that one of the reasons he liked it is because he feels like because he liked all the other stuff, this fits in with that.
Yeah.
And to me, this is such a letdown from all the other stuff, as a fan of what they've done in the past. And,
Well, you said you're not a big fan of Stella either, right?
Stella's not my favorite of the bunch.
See, Stella is even above Wet Hot American Summer, is my favorite, above The State even, is my favorite things that they've done.
Above this movie?
Above this movie as well. I love the Stella shorts so much.
Yeah, I don't really have strong memories of those, but
are those all online?
I think you can find them all. I have the DVD they used to sell at their shows, which is probably skips all over the place. Did
you go see them perform live?
No, I did around this time. I got to go see them in concert, but not back in like the heyday when they were doing this in the first place.
Where did you drive to see them?
California.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't believe they've ever performed live in Las Vegas.
No, I mean, of the State members, I have seen in Las Vegas Michael Showalter and Michael Ian Black perform stand-up comedy.
Yeah,
and Michael Ian Black is hilarious as a stand-up comedian. Michael Showalter is not a comedian at all, and it showed.
It seemed like he was just trying it just for the hell of it.
It did, which is incredibly frustrating when you're a working comedian and you see a guy who just gets up there and is like, I guess I'll open a national tour for my friend who's been working for 20 years to perfect his craft. But I mean, what's interesting is like you got Michael Showalter out there now as a director doing really well.
Really well.
David Wain out there, Thomas Lennon and David Ben Garant are like,
Robert Ben Garant.
Yeah, him too. Yeah. Robert Ben Garant, like billions of dollars in box office, and Ken Marino now is directing more. So it's interesting to see how they're all just kind of evolving at this point.
All thanks to the 10.
Yeah, no, definitely. But, like we were saying earlier about The State, that was really the influence of that has permeated so many different places. And they are all, I think, except for Michael Patrick Jan, they are all in this movie.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Josh. They are all in this movie. And in the last scene, they do there is a picture of Michael Patrick
is there?
Jan
Okay.
Have him have his appearance. He was supposed to do it, but there was like a scheduling conflict.
Okay.
But he seems to be the one that's the most removed from the state days at this
Yeah,
point in
he directs a
time.
lot of TV, but he's never really on camera anymore.
I think I saw him on that what was that show that Thomas Lennon, was it At Midnight? Did he produce that? Then Chris Hardwick and it
I
was
don't
like
know.
the three comedians.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they
I don't know
making-
if Thomas Lennon was involved, but
I think he was
Yeah.
like the writer producer, and then they did like a whole state episode where all of them were on one night.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
yeah.
So that wasn't a good show, by the way. It was just all puns from comedians. I was
Yeah.
like,
But speaking of, I don't know, was that you're saying the last scene, is that the like big musical number
Mhm.
scene that you're talking about where his picture is in it, or is it in one of the last sketches?
Dave would have
Yeah,
to-
I'm pretty sure it's the singing part. Yeah.
That was awful. That song was it's and talk about tossed off and lazy. It's literally just a summary of the movie, not even including jokes. And then there's like 2 more songs in the credits that do the exact same thing. There's like 3 songs in a row that summarize the movie as if they were like, we got to get this to 95 minutes contractually. Let's throw this in.
You're not wrong, but I love it.
It's
anyway.
funny that you say that because I don't even remember it, and I watched it a week ago. with you,
Yeah, it was
so-
so well. I mean, I watched all the way through the credits. Like there's the final musical number where they're on camera and all the actors are kind of singing about their characters. And then it goes black and it shows the credits. And I kept watching just because I wondered, like, how long are they going to keep singing about the plot of this movie?
Uh-huh.
So maybe if you turned it off before the credits ended.
Yes,
You
yes,
missed
y'all.
this.
It's Gretchen Mall.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you. Was this an inspiration for your comedy rap career, Dave?
Probably. Yeah.
as Jewish Dave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give him his real shout out.
Actually,
Yes.
we did do a like a live, I guess, cover performance of one of their early state sketches at UNLV. So yeah.
Which sketch was it?
It was actually from the unreleased at the time state album, which finally came out like around this time. Actually, it was a Holmes and Watson thing. Did you ever hear that?
No, but in high school, my musical theater teacher, Mrs. Carlson, who has acted for me since, was gonna let me direct in like a variety show, a piece starring all of like high schoolers of Porcupine Racetrack, the big number
Nice.
from the state of, which I never got around to doing, but should have. So you know.
Wow. I am newly impressed and horrified with the level of dedication that both of you have to the state.
Well, I mean, in high school, if everything's West Side Story and Pirates
Yeah.
of Penzance, someone's
Right.
like, "You want to direct Porcupine Racetrack?" You're
Yeah.
gonna be like, "Hell yeah!"
No, I would have. I'm sure I would have loved seeing that when we were in high school more than I enjoyed seeing you as Officer Krupke in West Side Story.
That was in the variety show. I was, yeah, that's right. And then in West Side Story, I played Doc the shopkeeper.
Oh, was it? Okay, I
Yeah.
couldn't remember.
No, I did just sing. I
you
did,
did sing
the
that.
song,
Okay, yeah, I remember going to see you in that.
And the audience is riveted with this stuff. so.
Yes. So, should we give this movie a rating out of 5 commandments?
Sure, I'll give it whatever you give it.
Man, you just lost your dedication to
It's,
this
I
at
mean,
all.
it's 2, you know.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe there are some that we've given 2.5 that this is equal to, but because this is the group involved with it,
Yeah.
I expect more from it. So I'm
Right.
giving it 2 commandments out of 5.
Yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars out of 5 when I wrote my initial review, and I liked it even less this time. I would also give it 2 out of 5. I don't think I laughed a single time during this movie.
But that's okay. This is Dave's pick.
Yeah, Dave
you
is
know,
laughing right now.
I'm having
so
a blast, guys.
Yeah,
It's
so.
okay. We can disagree. You know,
that is true. So
it's no Cabin Boy.
I mean, I guess I will agree with that.
Cabin Boy at least went for it on like
Yeah,
an
Cabin Boy did.
extensive
Yeah,
version.
I think that is actually one of the things about this movie too, is that
You want him to go
they're known
far.
for going so out there, and this movie feels like they went too far and yet also not far enough. It's not mainstream, but they didn't take it out there enough for it to like justify not being
I
mainstream.
agree. I think they should have gone all the way with it. man,
Yes.
You know.
Well, we'll come back and talk a little more about the legacy of the 10.
Dave, sing us out.
Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2007, we're talking about the pick from our producer, David Rosen, the state adjacent film, The 10, which does not have a cult following.
No, the station.
I don't know what you're trying to say there.
State adjacent.
Um,
Station.
So we talked a lot about sort of the general legacy of the state. David Wain, who's gone on to direct a lot of well-regarded comedies, role models. Well, I don't know if Wanderlust is well-regarded.
No, that was a disappointment.
Yeah, but they came together, has a lot of followers. And then the most recent movie he made, which I haven't seen, was A Futile and Stupid Gesture, the Netflix biopic about National Lampoon. Did you see that,
I
Jason?
started watching it. I honestly never got through it. And I do like the documentary about National Lampoon. What is it? Drunk, Stoned, and Dead, and
Something
Out of
like
Our
that,
Head or
yeah.
whatever. But yeah, that one was
Hey, I put
Yeah.
down my Netflix ban to watch it. So, but it's just.
Did you?
alright.
Did you? You didn't like it?
It's good, but I mean, I didn't love it or anything.
Yeah. But he's a successful working director, as are many of the people from the state. The thing that I was most sort of amused and surprised by in this movie that I noticed is that I was a big fan of Children's Hospital, which is probably the only state-related thing that I've really been into since then, that was created by Rob Corddry and kind of developed and produced by David Wain. And two of the characters in the 10 are actually in Children's Hospital.
Right.
That's right.
Glenn Ritchie, the doctor who kills someone as a goof, played by Ken Marino, and the newsman, who I was confusing with the guy you were talking about earlier, but Louis LaFonda, played by Mather Zickel, was also on Children's Hospital and then got his own spin-off called Newsreaders.
Yeah, Mather Zickel. That's quite a name.
It is quite a name. He's a funny actor. He's in a lot of comedy
it's a
stuff.
good thing, because with that name, it sounds like he'd be like a master criminal mind, murderer otherwise.
He could be, but instead he's a comedy actor. So yeah, I don't know why, because Children's Hospital has all sorts of weird random tangents. And the truth is there are lots of Children's Hospital episodes that are not good and that also just kind of randomly go nowhere. But I watched all however many 7 seasons or whatever of that show and still enjoyed it. So were you a fan of that, Dave?
Oh yeah, I've only watched like the first 3 or 4 seasons though. I've never got a chance to like get back to it and finish it up. But I do think it's like very similar in the style of comedy.
Yeah, it certainly is. And for whatever reason, I just felt like that worked. I mean, maybe because there are the ongoing characters, and even though it's completely absurd, there's some amount of character development, or maybe that's too
Yeah.
strong a term, but continuity, and it progresses, and you can get more and more into those characters and their weirdness as the show goes on. So did you ever watch that show, Jason?
I've watched some of it. I'd like to watch more of it. So,
Yeah.
Dave, do you have a favorite project from any of the state members since they've left that they haven't all done together?
That's a good question. I mean, I loved Michael and Michael Have Issues. I also loved Wainy Days, his web series.
Is there any state project that you did not like?
So that's interesting. Here's the thing. I've only seen it once, and I really have been wanting to go back and watch it again. But the thing with They Came Together is that was a script that they were trying to make for, I think, over 10 years, maybe even 15 years. And it just kept getting put on the back burner because of other projects. And I feel like there's so many jokes in it that popped up in other things along the way that I saw every last little bit of output from David Wain and these people along the way, that when They Came Together finally happens, every joke felt recycled. It felt like things I had already seen them do. And so it really just didn't work that well for me. I love the premise. I love everybody involved in it. But I was like, this all just feels kind of just reheated, just same old stuff. So that's kind of the weakest thing for me.
And
Yeah.
I like that one a lot.
I wasn't a big fan of that one either. And I was hoping, because it had gotten really good reviews and it sounded like something I would enjoy. And that was another movie that I think I watched and barely laughed at all.
So we know Michael Showalter's, he's really taking off right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
directing kind of mainstream
Yeah.
movies.
And I guess, the last thing he really did with the state beyond, the Wet Hot series with the Baxter had a lot of state people.
love the
in it.
Baxter.
I like the Baxter, and that was a movie that was not well reviewed at all. And I remember enjoying that one more than They Came Together, it's also kind of a romantic comedy parody. I thought it worked better.
Yeah, I didn't see the Sally Field movie. My name is.
Oh yeah,
Doris,
that's
which-
decent
like
too.
that a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
The Big Sick is great.
Oh,
Right. Yeah.
So, I want to give one that I really like. That is, I would say, if you want to take something productive out of this episode.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of other things that that people can watch that we're recommending. But what is it that you want to recommend?
I liked a lot Diggers, Ken Marino's
Oh my
movie.
God,
Yes, I had that down here as well to mention.
Yeah.
Which also came out in 2007 and
Yeah.
is so different from this movie. And it's a shame that Ken Marino hasn't done anything kind of dramatic or dramedy-ish like that since then. Because that movie is really good and really underrated.
Yeah, where he's kind of a and isn't Paul Rudd in that?
Yeah,
movie?
Paul Rudd is in it too. Yeah, and Paul Rudd, I think more so than other state people, has shown he can do dramatic things. He's got more range, or he's demonstrated more range.
Yeah, and that's what, if you haven't seen that, he plays like a fisherman in a Long Island community where corporate fishing is taking over, and all these kind of independent fishermen are going out of business and trying to survive. And it's those two and Ron Eldard and Lauren Ambrose, and it's just a really good independent story where, like we mentioned, Bobby Cannavale. If you'd never seen The Station Agent, you would go back and watch something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I would recommend that far and above the 10, really.
Make it a double feature.
Should have done an episode on Diggers. Yeah, I totally agree. The other legacy thing I was going to mention, that there's some very, very small roles in this movie with comedy people who went on to become big deals, of course. Jason Sudeikis, who was on SNL at the time, but is such a huge star now. And he's got a pretty small part in this. Rashida Jones, who shows up for like 2 seconds as a waitress. And John Hamm, who I didn't even notice until I was reading through the credits. And he plays the parachute instructor at the very beginning, who sends Adam Brody out of the plane.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until like a year or two ago.
Yeah. So all of them, of course, going on to be way, way bigger stars.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fun for these guys. I mean, they weren't famous at that point in time, but it's fun for them to go back now, because I think John Hamm has shown a real flair for comedy. Was he in one of the Wet Hot series? I don't even remember.
Yeah, he was. I think he played like a secret
those,
agent or something like that.
He's just very good at comedy.
Yeah, he is. All of those people are. Rashida Jones, very funny.
Yeah, she's great in it.
And has, again, a lot of range and is a great writer, can do a lot of dramatic stuff as well.
Jesse and Celeste.
Oh yeah,
that was a good movie.
I wasn't crazy.
It was all right.
Basically, we Josh and I are so down on this movie. We're trying to recommend as many other movies.
Right? Yes. Yeah. You could go see all these other things. Don't see the 10
unless you're a completist.
Right. I feel like that's the only people who are really seeing this movie at this point, because, like we said, it almost alone among post-state projects, this does not have a cult following.
I'll tell you who has seen this movie.
David Rosen.
Anyone who came into our house from like 2007 to 2012-ish, like nonstop, every time someone came to our house, they had to watch
How
this
did
movie.
it go over with people?
Most people were very confused, but
and have not come back since.
we don't hang out with anybody anymore. So
we're loners now. So
does your fiance like this movie?
Oh, she loves it. Absolutely,
okay. Well, then that's
she's
a good
been
match.
texting me from upstairs the whole time we've been recording this. So yeah.
So what are you excited about coming up from any of these state players?
I wish I knew. It doesn't seem like anybody's doing much right
Showalter
now.
is,
yeah,
right?
Showalter has another big.
Yeah.
I forget what it is, but he's really moving up the chain in terms of those bigger and bigger projects.
I wish Ken Marino would get another like big project. I mean, he does a lot of like just like kind of just the mainstream TV shows, like what are they, like WB or something? Like what?
Yeah, the WB hasn't existed in like 15 years.
So see, I don't even know.
It's UPN.
UPN, is that the name of the channel?
No, the CW. He always
good.
shows up in fun little roles. He was just on the new season of Veronica Mars, playing a character that he's played on that show for years, and it's always entertaining. I feel like any of these people from the state, when they show up in some little nothing part, even in something that you're not particularly enjoying watching, it's like, oh, look, it's that guy.
Right.
It's Carrie Kenny. It's Michael Ian Black, whoever. And they always add a little bright spot to something, whether it's a good project overall or not.
So Michael Showalter has recently, he's done a ton of TV stuff, including Search Party, which he helped co-create.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Search Party is great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
He did the Ray Romano special on Netflix, which is kind of cool because they're just drop-in sets. So that was a different one. And then he's attached to The Eyes of Tammy Faye and the Lovebirds. Do you know about
Oh,
either of those?
yeah.
I mean, The Eyes
yeah.
of Tammy Faye was a documentary about Tammy Faye Baker. I'm guessing this is a narrative version of that.
Right. So and
Who's
then
in that? It's got a great cast too, if I remember correctly. But I wish David Wain would announce something new already. It's
Yeah, I mean,
been a while.
he again is also, I think he directs a lot of TV stuff. And I mean, he worked on Children's Hospital pretty much the
Oh, yeah.
entire time. He was very involved in that show,
Yeah.
maybe even more so than Rob Corddry as it went on. So that was a pretty big project.
So the
for him.
Lovebirds is going to be another one with Camille, about a couple
Kamal Nanjiani. Yeah.
who gets into a fight and then they get somehow involved in a murder mystery and they have to solve the mystery and and survive the night. So it's basically a ripoff of the
that
Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be better than that Adam Sandler movie. Yeah, so I mean, as down as I am on this movie, I'm always interested in seeing whatever any of these people do next. And it's hit and miss, but I feel like every project has the potential to be great.
Yeah, I know. And I agree with you. I mean, we didn't mention Kevin Allison's podcast, which was pretty groundbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
As far as like,
Was it called Awesome Movie Year?
is it Taboo or whatever it is? Do you know what it is?
I forget
It's
the name of
basically
it.
it was like a real freeing thing for him where
Yeah.
I mean, he's gay, but like I think this was like maybe the first open discussion of his lifestyle
Yeah.
and taboo subjects, and now all these people go on and tell their stories, if I'm not mistaken. I could be making this all up.
No, it sounds
No,
interesting,
no,
and then
you're
maybe
right.
a little more grounded or serious than what a lot
Yeah,
of the
Carrie
projects have been.
Kinney's always nice to see when
Yeah.
she's
She's
playing
great.
characters. So we are fans of the state. We are not fans of the 10. That's
Yes.
the summary. If you've missed the entire episode.
the wrap up there. So that's the 10, and that's this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can follow us on social media.
Awesome Movie Year at all the things. Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter.
AwesomeMovieYear.com too.
That's a thing.
yes.
yeah.
Where are you, Jason?
Jason Harris Comedy on all the things. Jay Harris Comedy on Twitter. Go for Jason.
You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, and on Twitter at SignalBleed. And our great producer, David Rosen, who we've spent this whole podcast insulting, has his podcast, Piecing It Together, where he gets to insult others.
I'm just happy to be here, guys. You can find Piecing It Together wherever you listen to this podcast and on social media at Piecing Pod.
What's up next time, Jason?
Well, Josh, to cleanse our palate from Dave's fake cult classic,
Oh,
we are going with a real cult classic, Hot Fuzz. Man, that's one that lives on. People love it all the time, and that's what we're gonna do next week. Hot Fuzz, cult
Yeah.
classic.
I look forward to that. I haven't seen it in a while. I think it'll be fun to revisit that. So tune in for Hot Fuzz next time. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.